Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Dynamics 365 Tech Talk. Today's topic is new VAT return with direct submission to Altinn in Dynamics 365 Finance. My name is Jill, and I'll be your moderator today. We are broadcasting this session through Teams Live events, and the audio can be heard through your device speakers. This session is being recorded on behalf of the Microsoft Corporation. When you join this event, your name, email address, and/or phone number may be viewable by the session participants in the attendees list. By joining, you're agreeing to this experience. The recording will be available on the TechTalk's Community Dynamics page within 5 business days. If you have any questions for the presenters or need support, please use the Q&A panel located on the right side of the screen. Our presenters will be responding to your questions throughout the event and in the Q&A segment near the end. Thank you for your patience during these announcements. Presenting from us today from Microsoft, we have Elizaveta, Golub, Senior Program Manager. Eliza, over to you.
Thank you, Jill. Hello, everyone. My name is Elizaveta Golub, and I'm very happy to welcome you on our webinar dedicated to the new feature for Norway, VAT return with direct submission to Altinn. Together with me today on this webinar, my dear colleagues Adam Trukawka, Principal PM Manager, and Sergey Ivanov, Senior Software Engineer. We represent Dynamics Globalization Experience team of Dynamics 365 Finance, and specifically the regulatory reporting area. Whilst I will be presenting, my colleagues will be happy to answer your ongoing questions, which you can post in the event chat. We have lots of things to talk about today, and I also prepared several demos so that we had to extend the time slot of this session to 90 minutes. Thus, please accept my apologies for the late announcement about this extension. And we also hope to have time in the end of the session for Q&A. And one more thing about your questions that you can post during the session. In case, for some reason, some of your questions will remain unanswered during this session time, please no worries. We will include them into the deck before its publishing, so you will be able to find answers on your questions, and other people who might also be interested in similar matters would also be able to read the answers afterwards. So please, I encourage you to share your questions, thoughts, and comments in the chat. Your questions and answers will be included into the presentation. Thank you. And here is the agenda for today. In the first 2 sections, I will provide some basic information about the requirements on both VAT return format and the process of interoperation. And after that, I will make a focus on prerequisites, which must be considered before you start preparing your finance to report new VAT return and interoperate with Altinn web service. Next, we will make a deep dive into the implementation, starting from the conceptual aspects and then going through setup process, authorization, and finally VAT return generation and submission. And this part of the session will include 4 demos of the 3 processes: how to set up your finance for VAT return generation and submission to Altinn, how to authorize your finance to enable submission to Altinn, and finally, how to generate new VAT return, validate it in the tax administration web service, and finally transfer it to Altinn. I do hope this session will be useful and provide all the necessary information to start preparing yours and your client's environment to the legislation changes getting into effect starting from the January 1st, 2022. Before we start, please kindly take a moment to read our disclaimer. Basically, it informs that Microsoft Dynamics 365 Finance Solution for VAT Return of Norway with direct submission to Altinn is software under development. All dates, features specified are subject to change without notice, and Microsoft may make changes to specifications and product descriptions at any time without notice. Okay, and let's start from the beginning and talk about the changes introduced to the VAT reporting process in Norway. As we know, as a part of the Norwegian Tax Administration modernization project for VAT, the so-called MEMO project, new VAT return is introduced from the 1st of January 2022, replacing the current form-based, or we also call it box-based VAT return. There will be no transitional period. This means that VAT liable businesses in Norway will have to submit their VAT returns in the new format for the VAT reporting period starting from the 1st of January 2022. The current system of periodic VAT reporting will be continued. The normal reporting will still be bi-monthly. Taxpayers will still be able to apply for shorter periods or yearly returns if certain criteria in the Tax Administration Act are met. Current due dates for VAT returns and payments will also remain unchanged. Thus, for companies reporting VAT on bi-monthly basis, the first reporting deadline in the new format is the 10th of April 2022. Changes, however, affected the process of correctness of VAT return. From 2022, it will no longer be possible to submit an additional VAT return where solely the details to be corrected or added are included. To correct VAT reporting, the taxpayer will need to submit a new full VAT return to replace the previously submitted return. To read more about the MEMO project, you can use the link placed on this slide. The deck will be available in PDF format on the TechTalk web portal, and all the links will be available for your reference. Today, there are actually seven different Norwegian VAT returns. Leaving out of brackets the details of the purpose of all these formats, the new VAT return is replacing RF2 and RF4 forms. The digital VAT return, unlike the current return, will not have fixed set of boxes. The new VAT return will be based on standard SAFTI VAT codes, which were developed during the implementation of SAFTI accounting in January 2020. And thus, it is required that VAT accounting of the companies is adapted to standard SAFTI codes or mapped to these codes. As a result, the digital VAT return is a report on turnover, input and output VAT on an ongoing basis. The ongoing VAT reporting will include aggregated sums of transactions registered on each of these codes. As you can see on the screenshot representing the schema of the new report from the slide, the information about tax transactions must be grouped by the tax codes and some additional criteria that must be reported on the MVA specifications line record list with mandatory reporting of the standard tax code and optional specifications tax codes and the tax codes from the accounting system, VAT base amount, tax amount, and the tax rate. In addition, there can be reported transaction note in the mercant field. There are 25 safety VAT codes to be used in VAT return. For instance, Code 1 refers to the purchase of goods and services following the standard rate, 25%. Code 3 reflects sales of goods and services following a standard rate. VAT settlement on importation of goods by postponed accounting need to be mapped to Code 81. It is also important to mention that in addition to the standard VAT codes, there are different specifications introduced that are detailing some conditions that are not included in the Norwegian safety standard codes, and are intended to clarify which VAT assessment have been carried out. Different VAT transactions posted for the same safety code may require some supplementary information to be provided. For this purpose, specific field called mercant or note in English introduced into the report on the level of their transactions to provide additional information about the content of the VAT transaction to ensure that the taxpayer have the possibility to explain their application of law where necessary. This basically means that the VAT transactions posted must contain all the necessary information to allow mapping to the safety codes, specifications, and the mercant as well, where it is applicable. To avoid errors in reporting, system-to-system filing is the authority's preferred solution, meaning that companies are required on direct reporting from their ERP systems via specific API. And now we will quickly review some major details of this process. This slide may seem a little bit complex because the process of VAT return submission to the Norwegian Tax Authorities is quite complex. Norwegian Tax Authorities prepare two application programming interfaces, APIs, to allow submission and validation of new VAT returns. Submission of XML files to Skatteetaten needs to be performed via Altinn 3 API and requires the following steps that are shown on the slide. Full description of this process can be found by the link from this slide. Well, first step is the authorization. On this step, an accounting system that is used for submission must be authorized in Altinn for the further interoperation. Once the authorization was granted, you can send your VAT return to the tax authority for validation. This is not a real submission yet, but just to try to understand whether your VAT return file is okay with all the validations on the tax administration side. A web service of the tax administration provides validation of both format and content. Validation means that the format and content of the VAT return are automatically checked by the tax authority system. The aim of this validation is to check correctness and completeness of the reports filed by the taxpayers, and for the tax authorities to notify the taxpayers of any discrepancies in the VAT reporting without opening an audit or control. The validation may, for example, check that the sum of calculated VAT from every code equals to the total VAT of the report, and that ongoing VAT equals the VAT rate applied to the basis of the calculation. Link on the full description on the validation rules is also on this slide. So when the file is validated by the tax administration and company decides to submit it, the next step would be number 3, data filling using the Altinn 3 app endpoint. This step is the most complex. It is composed of 8 interoperations. As a result of this step, the XML file containing VAT return is transferred to Altinn. And on the steps 4 and 5, system that is transferring VAT return, a kind of informs the Altinn web service that the file transfer is completed. And on the last step, the system transferring VAT return retrieves the feedback about the file that was transferred. The feedback contains results of validation of the file that was finally transferred. Well, that was a brief overview of the requirements so that we would be on the same level of understanding of the requirements and terminology that I will be using during next slides and demos dedicated to our solution already. But before we can go to solution observation, I shall pay your attention to some important things that must be fulfilled before you start the feature setup in finance. Okay, on this slide, I collected some important things that must be accommodated before you start setting up VAT return with direct submission feature in finance. And first of all, the company must obviously be registered for VAT in the territory of Norway. This company must also have ID port and account created for this company. In this account, an integration point must be created and properly set up to interoperate with finance. In addition to that, there must be a user who will authorize finance against Altinn and submit VAT return. This person must have Norwegian social security number, and she or he must be granted with a special role in Altinn.no to be able to submit VAT. On your finance side, you should make sure about the sales tax code setup. The currency of the sales tax code, which must be included for VAT return, must be Norwegian krone, and sales tax code structure should be enough to accommodate all the safety codes and specifications applicable for the company's business. I assume that VAT registration of the company and creation of ID port and account, as well as user social security number and the role assignment in Altinn.no portal should be more or less common processes in Norway, when creation of the integration point in the ID portal should be something new. Thus, talking specifically about the integration point, I provide here on this slide links where you can find all the necessary information. The last link in this list helps to find the section of our feature documentation describing all the parameters that you should set up for your integration point so that this integration point would be possible to use for interoperation with Altinn from your finance. This is important to set up your integration point with the parameters that we recommend in our documentation. Basically, ID Portal provides now possibility to create a sandbox integration point to try the integration. And according to information from the Tax Authority, production integration point will look completely the same as, and all the same parameters will be applicable for production as well. So in case you would like to try the integration before the production need, you already can do so by creating a sandbox integration point in your ID Portal account. Well, here is the section dedicated to the requirements is completed. And now let's talk about our solution for the new VAT return with direct submission to Altinn. And I'm opening this part of the presentation with a slide that is about the major tools or features of finance that I use to support the new VAT return reporting process in Norway. The synergy of these tools is already widely used for VAT reporting of lots of countries. And first of all, this is already well-known electronic reporting module. In this feature, it is used not only to generate the VAT reports in the required XML and preview in Excel format, but also to support the entire process of interpretation with external web services. There are 8 different exporting and importing electronic reporting formats introduced for this feature, supporting the interpretation process in addition to the 2 for the VAT return. The process of interpretation of finance and external web services is managed by electronic messages functionality. This functionality is also already widely used in different countries, supporting different integrations with government's web services, but also for the electronic report generation as well. This functionality provides a lot of flexibility in construction such processes like we need for interpretation with web services of Norway. Flexibility may add complexity to the setup process. This is why in the scope of our solution, we provide almost full setup as a package of data entities that are responsible for setup of electronic messages. Thus, to set up electronic messages functionality, instead of long and complex setup of this module, you can simply import predefined setup by using data management workspace. This allows to significantly simplify the setup and save a lot of time on implementation of the new feature for each company that must report VAT in Norway. Okay, let's move on and go to the most interesting part of this session, setup and feature usage. And before I will talk about the setup necessary to the new feature specifically, I need to draw attention to one very important thing. This is related to those specific things that we touched during the requirements review, the standard tax codes and the additional optional tax reporting specifications and notes for the tax transactions. And this is probably the most complex part of the preparation for the new VAT return, because you will probably need to review and analyze the processes of the company and figure out which financial reasons must be added to properly report mercant notes, and whether the sales tax setup in your finance is enough to allow system determining all the applicable standard tax codes and specifications that are applicable for the business. Values from specifications enumerated list of values must be used with specific sales tax codes only. Make sure that your setup is compatible with applicability rules defined by Norwegian Tax Administration, provided in their documentation in information model 6SDs and coding sections by the link I gave on one of the previous slides. So I have marked again this slide with this exclamation mark so that you remember to draw attention to this important part. because in case some changes will be required to either tax setup or financial reason setup, please, now it is important. You should do all these changes in the master data before company will start posting documents for the reporting period starting from January 1st, 2022. Thus, their tax declarations, transactions are posted starting from the January 1st, 2022 would have already all the necessary properties to provide the proper report of the new VAT return. Talking specifically about the feature setup, I would like to pay attention first that the full step-by-step guidance on the feature setup is already published in Docs Microsoft.com. All the steps we will go through today are described there in details. Please use the link from this slide or find the new topics on the Norway section in table of content of finance globalization documentation. In the next several slides, I have provided some highlights that are important to pay your attention during setting up the feature. Here on this slide, I collected all the features that we recommend switching on in the feature management. It is easier to go to feature management once and just enable all the features at once. The most important are those which are in bold here in this slide. They are enable extended support of financial reason code feature. This feature will be necessary to be able to report mercant or note field of the report on the level of tax transactions. And VAT settlement format report feature is necessary to be able to use the new Excel format for preview the VAT return from report sales tax for settlement period menu item and also from the sales tax payment page by print report button. Both of these features are available starting from 10.021 version. Other features provide additional usability with the application-specific parameters functionality on electronic reporting formats that I believe is already known by those of you who is using our SFT report. I recommend enabling these features as well as soon as they will be available on your finance environments in 10.023 and 10.024 versions. This will make your life easier, at least with application-specific parameters. Okay. Next, and this is also very important to know that you should import all the necessary electronic reporting configurations before you import the setup for electronic messages. As I already mentioned, there are 8 additional to standard 2 VAT return formats included into this feature. These formats serve to support the integration process and are mostly technical formats. Most of these technical formats are under electronic messages framework model, and one of them is under tax declaration model, together with the 2 VAT return formats. And there are 2 model mappings under these models. And thus, after the import, mark default for model mapping for both of these model mappings, one under the tax declaration model and one more under the electronic messages framework model. After the configurations are imported into your finance, pay attention to configure application-specific parameters. And this part of your setup quite dependent of those activities that I mentioned before. Review and analysis of the processes of the company. Once you have clarity which nodes, specifications, and standard tax codes are applicable for your business and how they depend on the master data in the system, you will easily do this part of the setup in the electronic reporting format. When the setup of application-specific parameters is completed, please remember to change the state of your configuration to completed. It is important. Next, steps are quite simple. Check that there are number sequences for electronic messages functionality defined, and all four necessary document types are defined in the document management parameters. And finally, we can go to the setup of electronic messages. First, you should download a package of the data entities from the LCS portal, and then add your company-specific setup where it is necessary. VAT registration number of the reporting company, sales tax settlement period that will originate the VAT reporting, credentials of your integration point that you create in the ID portal, necessary security roles. All these steps are described in the details in the feature documentation, and I will also show them now in the demo. Well, going to the demo, I should say that this is a pre-recorded video where I show all the steps to be done, probably except for feature management activation, because it is assumed that all the necessary features are already enabled in the system. But all other steps to be done in finance to be shown. And these steps are enough to be able to generate and submit VAT return to Altinn. Some steps in this video are compressed for the purpose to save our time. And we start from LCS portal. First, I recommend to download from LCS portal 2 files that will be needed. We go to shared asset library and find data package asset type. Here we can find 2 files. They have the same prefix like NO VAT, and you should only download now these 2 files into your computer. One file is the package of the data entities that we will be using during setup of electronic messaging functionality, and another file is a kind of converter that will be applied by the system automatically to represent the validation results that we receive from the tax authority in the human readable form in the table in the browser page. Okay, as soon as these 2 files are downloaded to your computer, we can go to electronic reporting workspace and proceed with importing necessary configurations. Go to repositories, select the global repository, open it, and go first to the tax declaration model. Under this tax declaration model, there are both formats that are used for VAT return. Excel format is a format for preview VAT return in Excel format. It will not be sent anywhere, but it will be more useful for the user to review the VAT return before its submission in this form. And XML format will be imported automatically together with the Excel. Together with these formats, the model mapping will also be imported into your system and the model. Under the same tax declaration model, as I mentioned before, there is one technical format which is called Altinn VAT interpretation format. Make sure to import this format as well to your system and then go to the second model that is used in this feature. It is Electronic Messages Framework model. Under this model, there are several configurations. All of them are named with Altinn VAT prefix. You can import this configuration one by one or just select all of them together on the configurations fast tab, just like I'm showing here in this video. So all the configurations starting with Altinn VAT prefix must be imported. Just after the import is completed, make sure that the model mapping is also successfully imported and the model itself as well. With this, we can go back to the electronic reporting and go to reporting configurations workspace and check first that all the configurations are successfully imported into your system. Under the both tax declaration model and framework model. Make sure that model mappings are marked as default for model mapping for both tax declaration and Altinn VAT model mapping, like this. And then save this change. After you have marked their default for model mappings, we can go next to the application-specific parameters setup. As soon as we know exactly how our master data corresponds with the values that are expected by the scheme of the report, we can do this setup. And we start with the node for tax code lookup. This lookup field will be used to report mercant node. For example, I take this credit node value and I set this node to be reported for any tax code which have direction, for example, purchase credit node. Obviously, this is a kind of artificial example. In your case, you will probably have some special reason or some special tax code or something else. In my case, I rely on the tax classificator, on the direction of the transaction. Another example I take here is errors in accounting. And I set up this node to be reported for any tax code and any tax direction, but for only those transactions that are marked with financial reason error. It is also important to mention here that in the end of your setup, it is important to add 2 additional lines, even in case you do not have any specific setup here. You should add these last 2 lines into this node for tax code lookup field. This setup will help system to understand that no specific node to be reported for any transactions, and report will be able to successfully be generated for any transactions that will be included into the reporting period. After that, we shall go to setup of specifications. And before this setup, it is important to consult with the documentation of the authority, how they provide, how they assume these specifications to be assigned with the standard tax code, because not all of the values are applicable for any standard tax code. In my case, I checked that withdrawal is applicable, the withdrawal specification is applicable for any sales transactions. And thus my example, which is obviously also artificial, will use this specification for my sales tax transactions with sales direction. It is also important to mention here that in the end of this setup, you should also add these two lines for other values, because sales tax code and transaction classifier are always filled. There is no possibility to have this field not filled in with any value. We can set up only not blank for these two columns. When item sales tax group and sales tax group, in some cases, these two fields can be empty in your tax transactions. For example, when you do a direct posting for a specific tax code. So the last line is also quite important to set these two columns with blank values. Okay, when we have defined all the specifications that we will be using in this example, we can go to standard tax code setup already. In your SAFT report, you probably remember that you use external code setup for this purpose, but we received a lot of feedbacks that this is not quite useful. And these application-specific parameters is a more useful way for such mapping in between system tax codes and standard tax codes. So for this VAT report, we included possibility to define mapping in between system tax codes and standard tax codes also here in the application-specific parameters. My example here assumes that the same sales tax codes in the system are used in both directions, in purchase and in sales. As you can see, I define, for example, 25% for purchase and purchase credit notes, and also for sales and credit notes. And this tax direction allows me to associate the same tax code with different standard tax codes that are expected by the VAT return format. In your case, probably you will prefer to specify specific tax codes in your system, which would map with the standard ones one-to-one. In this case, you will not need to add additional lines for different directions. In the transaction classifier column, in this case, you would simply specify not blank, and tax code from your system will refer to a specific standard tax code. Well, it is important in the end of your setup to change the state to completed of your configuration. And now, as soon as my setup is completed, I export it as an XML file on my computer, because I will be using the same setup for another format, for Excel format, because the structure of preview format and XML format are completely the same, because we expect that this format will be used to make sure that the data generated in XML will be reviewed by using this Excel format. So here, as soon as the structure of application-specific parameters is the same, I just simply import preliminary created setup in XML, and I import it for Excel format as well. So I do not need to repeat all this setup again for Excel, but I should remember to change the state after all to complete it. This is important so that system could recognize this setup. Okay, for now our setup in electronic reporting module is completed, and we can go to other part of the setup. And first of all, we go to workspaces and data management. Here, by using data management, we will import the full setup, or actually almost full setup of electronic messaging functionality. We create here a new importing project. We can give it any name of our choice, and by add file, we select package because we have our setup as a package and you import it as a package and you do not need to unarchive it. You just use it as it is, just like you have downloaded it from the LCS portal. As soon as all the entities are listed in this table, I recommend to do the following. And this is needed to be done only when you do this import for the first time in your system. This is like a generation of the mapping from scratch. You should enter to each and every of the data entities from the package and generate the mapping. This is needed to make sure that the structure of your data entities in your finance equals to the one from the package. So this action to be completed for each of these data entities. And then you can import the data from these entities to your system. Here I have compressed a lot the video because usually it may take around 5 to 10 minutes to get all the data imported. But when you see this mark, it means that all the data was successfully imported into your system. And you can go directly to electronic messaging now to make sure to see how the setup was imported into your system. Go to Tax, set up electronic messages processing. And here you can see that all the actions were successfully imported into the system. And now we shall add the company-specific information. For this purpose, we go to Message Additional field and find the tax registration number field here. Here you should set up the tax registration number that will be used in your system to report the VAT return. I have blurred this number because this one is the real life registration number. So next, after you have registered the number, you should go to the Collect Sales Tax Payment action, right click and view details. We just go through this action and go through again to the Populate Records action. You can actually go to this page directly from the menu by using Tax Setup Electronic Messaging Populate Records actions, or like I have shown, by using drill through functionality of finance. And here we should provide the setup of sales tax settlement period. As we can see, we use this edit query button, and here for settlement period, select the settlement period that will originate your VAT records for reporting. After that, you can just go back to the setup of sales tax, of electronic messaging processing. Now we are going to general ledger parameters because there we need to specify two things. First of them is available for setup when the feature VAT statement is enabled in your system. When this feature is enabled, you will be able to see this field on the sales tax fast tab and select here the Excel format that is the child format of our XML format. As soon as this format is specified here, it will be possible to use this field for preview VAT return. Additionally to that, we should check that message and message items have set up for number sequences. Okay, next step, we go to Organization Administration module, and here we should provide setup for data management parameters. In data management parameters, we go to file types, and first of all, we just make sure that we have all the necessary types defined. We should have JSON, we should have Excel, both formats, and we should have XML. In addition to these three, I add XSLT format as well, because I will have to attach files of this type in the system. So after this was specified in document management parameters, we can go to the setup of the processing again. Go again to electronic messages processing, and now we will attach this XSLT file that was preliminary imported from the, downloaded from the LCS portal. We should find import validation response action and drill through this action. Make sure that you go directly to the properties of this action, because you should simply attach the XSLT file. Make sure to unarchive it preliminary to attach it as a file. Just select when it is unarchived as a pure XSLT file here. This will help to transform the response from the authority about the validation results to the business user. In addition to this action, you should find import final validation result as well and attach this XSLT file here as well. Because the structure of the response on these two steps of the processing is the same, we can use the same transformation file. So we select again the same XSLT file and attach it as a file to the action. Okay, we have attached XSLT, and now we just can go to the security setup. This security fast tab is intended to provide additional level of security for the processing. In my case, I select some existing role just for an example. In your case, you would probably like to create some additional roles or use some existing roles. Just this role will have access to this processing in the electronic messaging page. Make sure to enable this setup, otherwise that processing will be available for an administrator only. Similar setup exists in the web applications page. Here in the web applications, we have two applications related to those APIs provided by the Norwegian Tax Authority, and here these roles will have an access to submit, to first of all authorize and then submit VAT return. So it is not enough to have access to the processing to be able to submit VAT return. The access must be provided also on the level of the web application. And in addition to the security, it is important to set up here credentials of your integration point. When you create an integration point in ID Portal, you will get client ID and client secret. These are the fields where you should put those credentials. Other values like base URL, authorization pattern, token are already predefined for the sandbox of ID Portal. In case you will want to use this setup for production use, make sure to change the base URL to the production one. In addition to that, you should set the redirect URL equal to the address line from this page. So you simply copy and paste the path of this page to this redirect URL. In your NO Altinn web application, you have only base URL defined and no other fields are needed to be filled in here. So other fields are empty. Okay. This was a demo about the setup for the new VAT return. With this setup, your finance is ready to authorize and submit VAT. Adam, I think this part of the session was quite complex and maybe there are some questions dedicated specifically to setup. I think we can spend now around 5 minutes for some questions on this part.
Yes, hi Lisa. I think we are fine in terms of questions, so we can continue going. Maybe I will reiterate a few things which you have said at the beginning of this presentation. So this feature, we are R&D team. So we are giving this presentation right after we have released the feature. And practically you will be able to start testing it in the PEEP program for update 1024, which I believe starts on Friday this week or maybe next week. And for those of you who are watching this recording afterwards and you don't have a chance to ask questions, just a reminder, in scope of this PEEP program, Microsoft Insider program, we have a Yammer group, and Lisa will provide a link to this Yammer group at the end of the session. And in that Yammer group, we lead all the conversations, and this is the best way to access our team, ask questions, and potentially get more detailed responses. I realize, I think we all realize that all the details here which Lisa is presenting are pretty overwhelming. And that's on the purpose we're doing those detailed recording sessions. So at the moment you will be setting up your system for using this feature. You can play and pause the recording and get all the step-by-step instructions straight from the recording, which is, we believe, the great supplement to the documentation which we have already published. But anyway, so reiterating again, the Yammer group, tax reporting, this is the direct access to our team. And second, if you would not get proper answers or timely answers, please do not hesitate and use the email address which was at the beginning of the session and ask us the questions. So I think that's all what I wanted to say, Lisa, so please continue.
Great, thank you, Adam. Well, now I think we can go to the next part to know how to authorize your finance and in web services of tax administration of Norway. And the authorization process in finance is pretty simple. I will show next to this slide the demo of this process. The first step, you start with obtaining of an authorization code for ID Portal web service, and the main thing during this process is to retrieve the access token immediately after the authorization code is obtained. Then, as soon as the access token for ID Portal is received, you can request the token for Altinn, because for Altinn token you need the ID Portal access token. Important note here is that the authorization of your finance environment in your integration point in ID Portal is user specific. Because of this, finance also stores information about which user obtained the authorization code in ID Portal. Submission of VAT return from finance will be allowed for only this user. In case another user must submit VAT return, this user must go through authorization process preliminary to VAT return submission. Well, let's watch the demo and how to authorize your finance in ID Portal and Altinn. And for this purpose, we go to the tax, setup, electronic messaging, and web application page. This page already known from the setup session. And we remember that we have specified here credentials of our integration point, and we already specified redirect URL. After that, we just go to get authorization code on the action pane, click yes, and specify the language that you prefer to see the pages that you will be redirected. And you're redirected to the ID Portal authorization page, where I specify my test user credentials. In your case, that is going to be credentials of your real life user. So this user, as I mentioned before, must be granted with a specific role to submit VAT return by this integration point. And this is basically it for the authorization. After that, the ID Portal sends the authorization code that is successfully saved in finance. But it is important, as I mentioned, to start obtaining the access token immediately after the authorization code is received. So do not wait in between these two buttons. Just obtain the access token immediately after the authorization code. How to make sure that the access token was granted? Check that the access token will expire in is updated. And then you can additionally go to an Altinn web application and also use obtain access token button. This is it. So as you can see, it was pretty simple, and just make sure that access token will expire in field was refreshed with new 2 hours. So this was full demo of the process of authorization. As you can see, the process is quite simple, but once again, it is important to remember that the authorization is user specific. And in case when another user will need to submit VAT return for the next period, this user will have to go through this process preliminary, starting VAT return submission. Now, the most interesting part. We will now know how to generate VAT return, how to validate it in tax administration, and then how to finally submit it. And before we go to electronic messaging, I would like to mention that the Excel format VAT return can be used not only in electronic messaging. After you have completed your VAT settlement procedure, when you enable VAT statement format reports feature and defined the Excel format in general ledger parameters and changed the default layout of the sales tax authority, you can get your regular report sales tax for settlement period in the new format already. We hope this should be useful not only in the end of your VAT reporting period, but also during the period as well. User will be able to see the tax transactions aggregated, right, including all the details necessary for the final VAT return and provide corrections when needed preliminary to the process of the report generation in the end of the period. Talking about the submission, this process is also described in the details in our feature documentation. As you remember from the requirements review part of this session, the process is very complex, but we tried to simplify it for the user as much as possible. And for this purpose, we aggregated all the necessary actions into so-called unseparable sequences, so that user would pay attention only to those parts of this process when it is needed. Thus, user will need to create first a message providing dates for which the report must be generated and collect those sales tax payment transactions that must be included into the report. After all the necessary sales tax payments are linked to the message, user changes the status of the message to ready to generate report. In this status of the message, it is possible to generate either Excel file for final preview or an XML file for submission. Generated XML file can be sent for validation, and after successful validation, it can be submitted to Altinn. Let's watch how to do all these things in the system. In this demo, we will watch the happy path of the process when VAT return was fully validated. This is a real-time video, meaning that no compression was applied here, so that you can feel how long it may take. Actually, not that long. And we go to tax module, inquiries and reports, electronic messaging, inquiries and reports, electronic messages page. And in this page, business user having necessary security role will be able to create a new message. Necessary action is already predefined in the processing. User will need to specify only the dates of the period for which VAT return must be generated. In my case, I have some transactions in September-October period. Description can be any free text description of your choice. It will not be included into the report and serves only for the purpose of this page. Then we go to collect data. Also already predefined necessary action, and we simply click OK. As you can see, the sales tax payment record came and already linked to the message. We can simply review this sales tax payment line, go to the posted sales tax if it is necessary to review transactions that were posted and will be included into this report. Now I'm back to the electronic messages page, and as soon as all the lines are collected, I change the state of the message to ready to generate. And now generate report button became available. As you can see, all the actions related to the message are reflected in the action log, including user and dates. To generate report, we click Generate Report button. And first, I prefer to review in Excel. Okay, my report will be generated now in Excel format. Basically, when reporting period includes lots of transactions, it is recommended to set up batch directly in that dialog of run processing. As you can see, this action was also reflected, but it did not change the status of the message. And here in the attachment, I can find already generated my Excel file containing all the information about VAT return for the period of September-October in my system. I should click on Enable Editing button to make formulas enabled in this page. As you can see, all the amounts are reflected in this Excel format. Sum is equal to the sum that is also collected by using an Excel formula here. All the filters are available for the columns for the usability of the business user. So this is a preview format. So now I'm going to show how you can add a note to your declaration. This is not a note of the level of the tax transaction. This is a note of the level of the entire declaration. And there are also possible values that are allowed it to be assigned for the field mercant of the level of declaration. In my case, I select the free text, and when I select the free text, I should provide some note in the message, and this message and this note will be included into my declaration. I add an attachment of type note. Description can be any. It will not go to report, but the note itself, which can be up to 4,000 of symbols, can be specified here directly on the notes fields. So you can prepare it and put it here, or just type directly from this page. When you save, it is attached to your message and will be included to the XML format. Now I'm going to generate already XML format. I do not select preview format by default. Generate VAT return is in XML is selected here. It is also possible to generate in batch. Okay, now the status was changed and it is also reflected in action log, which particular user generated the report and when. The XML itself is also collected in the attachment page related to the message. It can also be quickly reviewed preliminary. As you can see, September, October, year 21, VAT amount 85, all at place, including our note that we have specified in the attachment of type note. Great. I feel like I'm ready to submit for validation, and thus I click Send Report button. Here, Send Validation Request action is already predefined, so I do not need to do any choice here. Just click OK button, and now my XML file is sent to the tax administration endpoint directly, and tax administration endpoint provides now the feedback. As you can see, the feedback was successful, and the status shows that VAT return validated successfully and ready to be sent. Okay, now I can click Send Report again, and as you can see, another action is already predefined here. It is Create Instance action, and I click on the OK button, and all the job will be done by the system automatically. There are a lot of action now going on. I did not provide any compression here, so this is more or less real time timing of this process, and this is how it will go on in the real life. So for now, our system sends request to the tax authorities and point and that to create an instance, then send the prepared XML file to that instance, and then asks Altinn Web Service to complete transmission of the file and request if the feedback was already received. In our case, as we can see, the feedback was not provided. This means that our XML was sent, successfully sent. It is already in Altinn. It was already, I'm showing here all the actions that were done during this time. And this upload VAT return means the moment when exactly our XML was sent sorry, to Altinn. And then we requested a status of the feedback. And the feedback was not ready at that moment. So we can send again, but this time it will be a request for the status of the feedback. So in case the feedback from the tax authority is ready, our system will automatically request this feedback and import it into the system. So we are waiting again, and Altinn may answer again, no feedback provided, or it may answer that feedback was provided. And yes, in our case, it was successful VAT return submission. As you can see, we requested status. Status was positive, and we downloaded the validation result again and imported these final validation results. In addition to that, we can, after successful submission, download another 3 files. They are payment information and receipt information. By payment information, we will receive some XML file containing information about payment. It is just an XML file which will be also attached to our system. It can easily be observed from the attachments page and open it as an XML format. It is readable, I think, enough. Okay, and another file that can also be requested from Altinn after successful submission is the receipt. Receipt is a PDF format, so when we request this format from Altinn, it is downloaded to our system and also attached to the message as a PDF file. As a PDF file, as you can see. It can also be reviewed if necessary by Open button. It is also important to say that you can download your validation result as many times as you want. So for now, I will be downloading these validation results again. So there is no problem to receive this information just once again to your system. Okay. This was the happy path. As you can see, quite simple and clear. All the actions are combined where needed and are run automatically. And those actions where a user control should be provided are initiated by the user. Now I would like to quickly show one more one more demo, and this is the last demo for today. I hope you are not so tight yet. This demo is about how to deal when you receive validation errors as a result of VAT return validation by tax administration. I first review again the documentation on the specification to find which values of specifications are applicable or not applicable. For example, for some tax codes, I go to the application-specific parameters of my XML configuration, and I want to include here some artificial erroneous condition to introduce some error into my XML file. As you can see, only withdrawal is applicable for the sales transactions, and I will include now something which is absolutely inconvenient, like a reversal of input VAT tax for for sales tax of code, for example, 11%. So I will report sales transactions of 11% with the specification, which is absolutely inconvenient for this tax, which is reversal of input value added tax. I will move this line to the very top of this list by using this new move up button, and I save my updated configuration. After the configuration is updated, I will go back to electronic messages page, and I allow temporarily to myself to delete electronic message in the successful status. Now, after this refresh, as you can see, the delete button is enabled, and I can enable this message. After the message is deleted, I will start from the beginning. I will create the message again and specify the same dates of the same period that I was showing in the previous demo of the happy path. But now my report will include an error. So I will collect my sales tax payment, and it will be linked to my message. After that, I update the status to ready to generate, and I generate in XML right now. We will quickly review this XML file to see how the changes in application-specific parameters setup, how this influenced the result file. As you can see, the code 32 was wrongly associated with inconvenient specification. And now I send this erroneous report for validation. As we can see, we received an error from the validation. And in the action log, you can find the import validation response action. See that all the necessary information is in the attachment. Go to the attachment and open. So this page that will be opened now is the result of that XSLT that we attached to this action. As we can see, Tax Authority informs us that for the code 32, it is not possible to use that specification that we were using In case you think that this information is not enough for you to understand, you can go to the Tax Authorities web portal and in the validation rules section, find all the details for this error information. Okay, in my case, I know for sure what was wrong in my setup, and I can just go to the application-specific parameters and exclude that error from my setup. I find this line in specification and I simply delete the error line from the setup. Now I do not need to recreate a message. I just regenerate the XML file using the same message. And as soon as it is generated, I can send it again to the tax administration web service. As you can see now, it was expectedly validated successfully. Okay. Well, this is all I wanted to show you today. I understand this probably was a little bit long session today, and I thank you for your attention. This is the last slide of the content for today, but I just cannot skip this because I know this will also be asked. Well, what version of finance should we set up to start using the VAT return for Norway? Please take a note or screenshot this slide to know which build number should be used in version 10.021, 22, and 23. Basically, for your setup of financial reason will be enough to have builds from the left table, but I recommend to upgrade already to the builds necessary for the full feature scope. These builds are in the right-hand side of the slide, and I intentionally highlighted this table. So the full feature scope is available starting from version 10.021, which is already generally available, and you can start using it starting from the build numbers mentioned on this slide. Well, thank you very much for your attention during the presentation. And I think we have a couple of minutes more for Q&A part. Adam, please let me know if there are any questions left that we could try to answer now, or probably there were some questions or comments that you would like to voice and comment.
Yes, Lisa, as I said, I think we are fine. In general, we answered most of the questions, and the answer is published here in the public the pane of Q&A. I think what's important to reiterate, because there was a few questions on the border of our connection with Altinn and all those systems and APIs. We understand it's very confusing and it requires some learning if your company haven't used yet all those submission portals, and you have to study those requirements from the third party for us, for Microsoft, to whom we integrate. And probably there are some details of all these APIs which you would be interested in. All of this is published on those portals. I think Lisa put some useful links at the beginning of the presentation. So what I'm saying, potentially there will be lots of questions to that proxy between the Norwegian government and Microsoft. And we are trying to provide all the details here, how we integrated this application and how it works. For now, we tested this connectivity. We tested validity of the format on the receiving side, and so on. But still, there will be potentially some changes going on the way. This is what usually happens. We had some experience from similar integrations like in the UK. where government also requested direct integration for submission of VAT declarations. So this is live environment. The API versions will change over the time, and we'll have to also adjust this integration. But what's important to mention, this electronic messaging framework, which we have presented in such a details here. It's all configurable on your side, as a customer side. You can enter those configurations and potentially do some adjustments. And I think there were questions about version availability and so on. I think the last slide, which you, Lisa, presented, explains that. But one more thing to reiterate from very beginning of the presentation, we believe that you have to set up your system for additional justification codes, right, Lisa? Just to properly tag the transactions at the moment of posting. This is very important to understand and reiterate that you must be ready before 1st of January when you start posting new tax transactions, so you can properly report them with this automation which you have just presented. And please use this time which is remaining right now. I think we have like 1 month before this new submission is required to configure your systems. And I think that's all for today. So Lisa, please continue to closing and hand over to
Okay, thank you, Adam, very much. Thanks to all for your questions. And closing the event, let me remind that on the last page of the deck, you will find some useful links which can help to simplify your search of the necessary information related to the feature. I encourage you also to share your feedback with us to helping us to better understand your problems and needs. I also encourage you to join our tax declaration and tax audit and reporting service groups in Yammer. These groups are dedicated specifically to topics related to reporting. These links on these groups are also included to this useful links section. And closing the event, let me thank you very much for participation and your attention during the session. Big thanks to my colleagues and TechTalk platform team for organizing the session and helping me with Q&A today. Also, huge thanks to our colleagues from the support team for delivering all the important information, and also to all and everyone who helped to distribute the invitation on this event. Thank you all very much and have a great day ahead. Jill, back to you.
Thanks, Elizaveta. Hey, I've posted a link to the short survey in the Q&A panel. We'd like your feedback on today's session and to hear what you'd like to see in future events. We appreciate your participation today, and as a reminder, the recording of today's session will be available on the Tech Talks Community Dynamics page within 5 business days. I'd like to extend a big thank you to our presenter and to the audience for joining us today. Enjoy the rest of your day and stay safe.